What if the man you married to protect you was also hiding the biggest secret of all? Harper Quinn, a junior analyst, is thrown into a web of betrayal, corporate espionage, and buried love when she unknowingly becomes the key to a billion-dollar empire. Her ex-boyfriend and her own sister betray her. Her powerful husband falls into a coma, and just when the truth seems too heavy to carry, she discovers she's pregnant. Will Harper fight or fall? You have to hear the whole story to believe it. Where are you watching from? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Have you ever stood so close to something beautiful that it made you question if it was real? That was exactly how Harper Quinn felt as she stepped barefoot onto the marble floor of a Manhattan penthouse, the city's skyline glittering behind her like a mirage. A soft hum of jazz drifted through the warm air, mingling with the scent of lavender and beeswax candles. The bathroom looked like a scene pulled straight from a dream. Dim lighting, bubbles frothing in an oversized tub, gold fixtures glinting like stardust. But none of it dazzled her more than the man who now stood by the window, his figure cast in silhouette against the glow of the city. Nolan Hudson. To the world, he was the magnetic CEO of Hudson Innovations, a tech empire that ruled the East Coast. To Harper, he had always been a myth. Someone you heard about in meeting rooms or saw from afar during quarterly briefings. She never imagined she'd end up here, married to him in a ceremony so sudden it barely left time for her heart to catch up. They had exchanged vows just hours ago in a private suite with only a judge and a blur of legal documents to witness it. No dress, no ring exchange, just a signature and the quiet resolve in Nolan's gaze when he said, "This is the only way I can protect you." Harper didn't understand what she needed protection from. Not fully. All she knew was that something dark lingered at the edges of her world, something involving her ex-boyfriend Ethan Bennett and a storm she was only now starting to feel the winds of. Ethan, charming, ambitious, reckless, had once been her entire universe. He was also Nolan's estranged nephew, though no one talked about that much in the office. Their relationship had ended months ago, without closure, like a door slammed in the middle of a sentence. Harper had buried the heartbreak beneath spreadsheets and coffee-fueled all-nighters. She never expected that her next chapter would start with Nolan Hudson whispering, "Trust me," as he slid a wedding band onto her trembling hand. Now, as she lowered herself into the warm bath, the tension began to ease from her shoulders. She leaned her head back, eyes closed, trying to make sense of the swirl of emotions inside her. Fear, disbelief, and something far more dangerous. Hope. Nolan entered the room quietly and settled behind her in the tub, his arms wrapping around her like a shield. She felt the steady rhythm of his breathing, the way his chest rose and fell against her back. It should have felt invasive, too intimate. But it didn't. It felt grounding. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice low and sincere. Harper hesitated, then nodded. "I think so." They sat like that for a long moment, the kind of silence that feels deliberate, like both people are holding their breath under the weight of unsaid things. Harper stared at the flickering candle on the sink's edge, its reflection dancing on the surface of the water. She didn't know what possessed her to say it, whether it was the steam or the music or the quiet safety of his arms, but the words came anyway, soft and shaky. "Honey, I love you." The sentence landed between them like a dropped glass, unexpected, fragile, loud in its honesty. Nolan didn't respond right away. His breath caught, and she could feel his arms tighten just slightly. "You don't have to say that," he murmured. "I didn't plan to." He turned her gently so she was facing him, her knees brushing his. For the first time, she looked directly into his eyes, clear, intense, searching. "I'll always keep you safe, Harper," he said. His voice was deep and certain, but there was a shadow in it, something guarded, something that didn't match the softness of his touch. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe this wasn't just a business decision, a calculated move dressed in candlelight and silk sheets. But she couldn't ignore the nagging thought in her mind. Why would a billionaire marry a junior analyst with no status, no power, unless she was a piece in someone else's game? She closed her eyes again, letting his arms pull her close. The bathwater swirled around them, warm and quiet, hiding everything beneath the surface. And just like that, Harper Quinn, analyst, dreamer, newlywed, fell into a night she wouldn't forget. A night that would become the beginning of a love story soaked in lies, wrapped in silk, and sealed with secrets she hadn't yet begun to uncover. The morning sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, gilding the room in soft gold, but Harper Quinn felt nothing but cold. Silk sheets tangled around her legs as she stared blankly at the ceiling, the events of the night before looping in her mind like a film reel she couldn't pause. The wedding, the bath, the whispered promises. "I'll always keep you safe," Nolan had said, his breath warm against her ear, his arms holding her as if shielding her from a world she didn't yet understand. For a moment, it had felt real. She had almost believed in the warmth, in the comfort. She had almost believed in him. Her phone buzzed sharply on the nightstand, pulling her from the cocoon of doubt. She reached for it, expecting maybe a message from Nolan, something simple, "Good morning," or "I'll be home soon." But it wasn't from Nolan. It was from an unknown number. The subject line made her stomach flip. "Read this. Now." Her thumb hovered before she tapped, and then the screen filled with something that made her blood turn to ice. A screenshot of an email, short and sharp, yet devastating. "Harper's access got us the files. Hudson's prototype is nearly ours. Keep her distracted." From Ethan Bennett to Sydney Morgan. She sat up straight in bed, her heart hammering in her chest. Her hands trembled as another message appeared. "Your marriage isn't an accident. Ask Nolan what he's really hiding." The phone slipped from her fingers and landed on the duvet with a dull thud. She stared at it, her mind spinning, her breath shallow. Ethan, her ex, the man she'd once trusted with her heart. Sydney, her sister, the one who always stood in the spotlight while Harper lingered in the background, trying to be enough. The betrayal burned, but it was the second message that pierced deeper. Nolan. The man she'd just married. The man who had held her so tenderly the night before. Was he using her too? Her thoughts raced back to her time at Hudson Innovations, to the seemingly harmless files she'd shared with Ethan months ago. He had asked for help, told her it was for a project, and she, so desperate to be needed, to be loved, had believed him. Now it was clear. He hadn't wanted her. He had wanted access, leverage, a key into the empire that Nolan had built. And Sydney. Of course Sydney was involved. The golden child, the family favorite, the rising fashion star. Harper had always lived in her shadow, her every achievement eclipsed by her sister's shine. But this wasn't just jealousy. This was sabotage. This was war. The door creaked and Harper snapped out of her spiral as a maid peeked in, whispering that Nolan had left for a board meeting. She nodded absently, waiting for the door to close again before she climbed out of bed and stood in the center of the room, the city stretching far below her. A world full of people, full of lies. Her reflection in the glass startled her. She didn't look like a wife or a victim. She looked like someone on the edge of something dangerous. She picked up her phone again, this time with purpose. She needed answers. She needed truth. She opened the Hudson network, a back end she still had limited access to thanks to her analyst credentials, and searched for Ethan's name. The trail was easy to follow. Emails, file requests, shared drives. Her fingers flew across the screen, her stomach twisting with every new piece of evidence. There it was, a thread between Ethan and Sydney, discussing how to sell the AI prototype Nolan's team had been developing to Vertex Corp, Hudson's biggest competitor. Sydney's messages dripped with mockery. "Harper has no clue. It's like stealing candy from a kid." Her throat tightened. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. Suddenly her phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message, this one even more pointed. "Board meeting at noon. Ethan's making his move. You have one shot." Harper stood frozen for a breath, then straightened. Her blood burned with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. She threw on a tailored blazer, pulled her hair into a clean bun, and slipped on a pair of heels that clicked with authority across the penthouse floor. She was done being the girl everyone underestimated. She was Mrs. Hudson now, and she was ready to fight. Hudson Innovations towered over Midtown Manhattan like a blade of glass, sharp and gleaming, a symbol of power and precision. Harper Quinn stood in its lobby, her heart pounding like a war drum beneath her crisp blazer. The elevator ride up to the 32nd floor felt both too fast and too slow, every second crashing against her nerves. She clutched her tablet tighter, the evidence locked inside like a live wire ready to detonate. Her heels clicked across the polished marble floor as she stepped into the boardroom. Just as the meeting began, Ethan Bennett was already there. Poised, polished, and smug. He stood near the conference table, flanked by executives in tailored suits and tight smiles. Nolan sat at the head, expression unreadable, but when his eyes met Harper's, something shifted. A flicker of something. Hope? Worry? Guilt? The room buzzed with tension as Ethan cleared his throat, tapping a remote. As some of you are aware, he began smoothly, the delay in Hudson's AI prototype has cost us momentum. I believe the solution is fresh leadership. My uncle's recent distractions have impacted our progress. Harper's stomach twisted. She scanned the room. Faces leaned in, some nodding, others skeptical. But no one was stopping him. And Nolan, why was he letting Ethan talk? She took a breath, stepped forward, and spoke, her voice calm but commanding. Before you consider any changes in leadership, I think you should see this. All eyes turned to her. She tapped her tablet, connecting to the projector. A series of emails appeared on the screen. Messages between Ethan and Sydney, timestamps, attachments, contracts. The words seared through the air. Data theft, prototype blueprints, corporate espionage. And there, nestled in the exchange, were the phrases that made the boardroom erupt in gasps. Harper gave us access, and Nolan doesn't suspect a thing. Ethan's smile evaporated. This is fake, he snapped, but his voice cracked, his confidence unraveling like a frayed thread. Nolan leaned forward, his voice low but lethal. Explain yourself, Ethan. The board erupted, voices rising, accusations flying. Ethan tried to interrupt, tried to spin, but no one was listening anymore. Harper stepped closer to the table, her pulse steady. I trusted Ethan once, she said, her eyes on the board, then Nolan. I shared files I thought were harmless. He used me. And my sister helped him. They thought I'd stay quiet. She looked at Nolan now, her voice firmer. I'm not that girl anymore. The room fell silent. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the chairman of the board stood. Motion to suspend Ethan Bennett, pending investigation. Seconded, came another voice. Carried. Security moved in, Ethan's face contorted with fury. He tried to lunge at Harper, but they grabbed his arms before he got close. As he was dragged toward the door, he spat over his shoulder. You'll regret this, Harper. You don't know what you've started. She held his gaze, unwavering. I just ended it. When the door slammed shut behind him, a strange quiet settled over the room, broken only by the rustling of papers and the buzz of shaken investors. Nolan stood and crossed to her, his face unreadable. You didn't tell me you had this, he said quietly. Harper folded her arms. You didn't tell me why you married me. Nolan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Ethan was circling you. I knew what he was capable of. I thought, if I kept you close, I could keep you safe. I should have been honest. His voice softened. But last night, when you called me honey, I wanted that to be real. Her heart skipped, but she wasn't ready to trust words. Not yet. No more secrets, she said. Nolan nodded, something like a vow flickering in his eyes. But the moment was cut short when her phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. Check Sydney's vendor list. She's stealing designs. Act fast. Back at her desk, Harper ran the trace and found it. Payments from Sydney to an unknown designer, designs submitted for the Vogex project that looked eerily familiar. Her stomach tightened. Sydney wasn't just a traitor. She was a thief. Harper could expose her now, but rushing in might spook her, or worse, tip off Ethan's remaining allies. She had to be smart. Strategic. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about protecting what mattered. Her job, her name, her future. She looked out over the city, its pulse beating in time with her own. She wasn't done. Not even close. That night, Harper Quinn returned to the penthouse with her mind a storm. The city below sparkled like it always had, but she didn't see beauty. She saw betrayal in every reflection, secrets in every shadow. Nolan was waiting for her by the window, a glass of red wine in his hand, his tie loosened, the exhaustion in his eyes impossible to hide. When she walked in, he turned, offering a faint smile. You were fierce today, he said, setting the glass down. Harper didn't smile. She walked past him, pulled her heels off, and let the silence speak for her. He stepped closer, slower this time, as if sensing the weight she carried. You don't have to fight alone, he said gently. I'm here. She met his eyes, searching for the sincerity she wasn't sure she'd find. Part of her wanted to fall into him, to believe the warmth in his voice, the steadiness in his presence. But doubt still lingered. He reached behind the couch and brought out a sleek black box, placing it into her hands. "What's this?" she asked cautiously. "Something I had made for you, for tonight." Inside was a sapphire blue haute couture dress, the same shade as the dress she once mentioned in passing during a casual conversation she didn't even remember. The fabric shimmered in the light, delicate and bold all at once. "I had it made by a Paris atelier," he said. "For you." "It's too much," she whispered, overwhelmed. "It's not enough," he replied. "Not for everything you've done." She tried it on, and when she stepped back into the room, Nolan's eyes softened. "You're beautiful," he said simply. Harper's breath caught. For a moment, they danced in the living room without music, swaying slowly, the city humming below them. Her head rested on his shoulder, and for the first time in days, she let herself believe, just a little, that maybe this wasn't a lie. Maybe this was something real. But reality crept in, like a chill. The next morning, Harper met Jamie Carter, the quiet IT specialist who had been feeding her tips at a small cafe in Soho. Over bitter coffee and a croissant she didn't touch, Jamie handed her a USB drive. "Ethan's been in contact with Derek Walsh," Jamie said quietly. "They're planning to crash Hudson's stock. He's still coming for the company. You, Nolan. Everything." Harper's jaw clenched. "How?" "They're betting on Hudson's failure, shorting shares. Once Vogex pulls out of the deal, everything spirals." Harper nodded, slipping the drive into her coat pocket. She had no time to waste. Back at the penthouse, she found Nolan pacing the office, tension visible in the set of his shoulders. "What's wrong?" he asked as soon as she walked in, concern flickering across his face. "Ethan's not done," she said. "I need your help to stop him." Nolan's expression hardened. "Whatever it takes." Harper felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Nolan was really on her side. But there was still Sydney. Her sister's designs for the Vogex collaboration were due the next morning, and Harper knew Sydney wouldn't go down without a final act of sabotage. Harper stayed up late, combing through Sydney's drafts. They were better now. Too good. And then she found the file. An invoice to Sydney from Lana Reed, a little-known freelance designer. Jamie had been right. Sydney hadn't just cheated. She'd stolen someone else's voice, someone else's art. The next day, in Hudson's sleek conference room, Sydney stood at the front, smiling like the queen she always believed herself to be. Derek Walsh and his team from Vogex were seated across the table, nodding with approval as Sydney walked them through the AI-assisted fashion line. The room buzzed with polite excitement. Then Harper stood. "These are impressive, Sydney," she said evenly. "But I think Lana Reed should walk us through the inspiration." The room fell silent. Sydney's face paled. "She's just an assistant," she snapped. Harper turned to Lana, who sat quietly in the back. "You're safe now," she said gently. "Tell the truth." Lana stood, voice trembling. "I designed everything. Sydney said if I told anyone, she'd ruin me." Gasps rippled through the room. Derek's face darkened, the mood in the room shifting. Sydney tried to laugh it off. "She's lying. Harper's always been jealous." But Harper didn't flinch. She plugged in Jamie's drive and projected evidence. Emails, payment trails, even voice recordings. The silence afterward was deafening. "You're off the project," Derek said finally. "Effective immediately." Sydney's face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed, storming out. But Harper didn't care. She had bigger things to protect now, and her war was only beginning. Harper Quinn stood by the hospital bed, her hand wrapped gently around Nolan's motionless fingers. The beeping of machines was the only sound breaking the sterile silence, a slow, steady rhythm that both comforted and haunted her. The crash had happened in Tribeca. Nolan's car struck by a truck linked to Ethan Bennett's remaining allies. Now Nolan lay unconscious, his usually sharp eyes closed, his body still. Her world had tilted in an instant, and all the power she had gained in the boardroom now felt utterly useless. She'd barely slept since the call. The moment she arrived at Mount Sinai, she hadn't left his side. Even now, with the city alive just beyond the hospital window, her universe had shrunk to this one dim room, to one quiet breath after another. Nolan's hand felt warm but limp in hers. She brushed her thumb against his skin, whispering, "You promised to stay, honey." The door opened, and in walked Dr. Vivian Lane. Cool, polished, far too composed. Her presence always set Harper's nerves on edge. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew more than she let on, her smile tight, professional, but never kind. "I'm managing Nolan's case," Vivian said, scanning his chart. "His condition is stable, but we can't say when or if he'll wake up." Harper straightened. "How do you know him?" Vivian didn't look up. "We went to college together. He was special to me." There was something pointed in the way she said it, something laced with ownership. Vivian glanced at Harper, her voice dipping low. "He married you, but let's be honest, you're not his first choice. You're just a placeholder." The words hit like a slap. But Harper didn't flinch. She held Nolan's hand tighter. "He's my husband," she said quietly, "and I'm not going anywhere." Vivian offered a thin smile, but Harper saw the flash of annoyance in her eyes before she turned and left. The door shut behind her, and Harper's composure finally cracked. She blinked away tears and pulled Nolan's phone from the drawer beside the bed, one of the few personal items recovered from the crash. A notification buzzed across the screen, a test result. Her breath caught as she opened it. Pregnant, early stages, likely from those first, tender weeks when the lines between protection and passion blurred. She pressed a hand to her stomach, her voice barely a whisper. "We're having a baby, Nolan. You have to wake up." The thought of raising their child without him made her chest ache, but she refused to spiral. Not again. Later that evening, Jamie Carter called. "We found something," she said. "Vivian's dosing him with sedatives, far more than necessary. It's not standard. Something's wrong." Harper's blood ran cold. "She's keeping him under?" "We think so, and we found someone. Dr. Ava Coleman, coma specialist in Seattle. She's on the next flight." Harper thanked her and hung up, her heart thudding with urgency. She met Ava the next morning in the hospital lobby. The woman was calm, mid-40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Show me everything," Ava said. Inside Nolan's room, Vivian was adjusting the IV. When Harper entered with Ava beside her, Vivian froze. "This is Dr. Ava Coleman," Harper said coolly. "She's taking over." Vivian narrowed her eyes. "You can't do that." Ava stepped forward. "I've reviewed his chart. Your sedative dosages are excessive and unjustified. Step aside." Vivian's mask cracked, anger flashing across her face. "He needs me." "No," Harper said. "He needs someone who isn't trying to control him." Vivian stormed out without another word. Over the next few hours, Ava worked carefully, flushing Nolan's system, stimulating neural activity. Harper never left his side. She told him stories, held his hand, whispered about their baby, about how the world was waiting for him. Hours later, his fingers twitched. Then slowly, his eyes opened. "Harper?" he rasped, voice raw. She gasped, tears spilling freely. "I'm here," she sobbed. "I never left." He smiled weakly. "Knew you wouldn't." Ava stepped back, nodding. "He's back." Days passed as Nolan regained strength. One evening, as Harper fed him soup in his room, she confessed everything. Ethan's sabotage, Sydney's exposure, Rachel's betrayal. Nolan listened, jaw tightening, pain flickering in his eyes. "She said I was a placeholder," Harper admitted softly. He reached for her hand. She lied. "I married you because I love you." Then he opened his phone, scrolling to a photo, 2 children on a boardwalk, a young girl handing a sad boy a handful of candy. "That was you," he said. "You saved me then. I've been looking for you ever since." Harper's breath caught. That boy, she remembered him. "I guess we found each other again," she whispered. "And we're not letting go this time," Nolan said, pulling her close. She placed his hand over her belly. "We're not alone anymore." He smiled. "We're a family." And just like that, the past, the pain, and all the lies melted into something new, something real. Sometimes, life doesn't give us fairy tales. It gives us battles. And through those battles, we discover who we really are. Harper's journey wasn't about falling in love with a billionaire. It was about learning to trust herself, to fight back when the world tried to silence her, and to believe that even in a storm of betrayal, love can still be real. She stood up against lies, faced her family's cruelty, and uncovered the truth behind the mask of power. Through every moment of doubt and pain, she kept showing up. And that's what love is. Not perfection, not grand gestures, but choosing to stay, choosing to grow, choosing to fight for something real. Nolan, too, had to confront his past, his fears, and the walls he built to survive. It wasn't easy, but together they faced it, step by step, truth by truth. And in doing so, they created something stronger than the world's schemes, a bond built on honesty, pain, healing, and ultimately, hope. This story reminds us that love isn't a fairy tale. It's a choice. And the bravest thing we can do is choose each other, even when it's hard. So now, let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if this story touched you, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. There's so much more to come, and I'd love for you to be part of the journey.